talking about Unit 6, Chapter 1, which is the age of contact. Everybody has their student reader? Okay. Alright, so Chapter 1's framing question is how did European interest and rivalries shape trade and colonization? What does that mean, rivalries? Jensen?
Like two people like who they want, two people had animosity for each other.
Good job, using one of our spelling words. Yeah. And what, like, they are kind of in a what?
It's like instead of like disagreement.
A disagreement, but more so like a.
They're basically kind of like gunning for each other.
Yeah. They are trying to be the best of the best, right? So they're in a competition kind of. And what were they competing to do? What do you think? To get rich. What else?
To get glory.
Yeah, the bragging rights, right? So they were trying to colonize these new places or be the first one to discover new areas or to find new routes. Yes.
And talk about their culture.
Yeah, spread their religion. That was one of the other things we talked about yesterday. All right, so we are at the end of our unit, which will probably be after LEAP test. Going to do our unit task. We are going to decide what we think is the greatest effect of the age of contact. We've talked about cause and effect in ELA. We know that sometimes like effects can be good things and sometimes they can be what? Bad things, okay? And after LEAP, we'll give a presentation that supports your claim. Everybody in here might have a different idea, but whatever you think the greatest effect of this time period is. All right, so today we're going to continue to talk about the European explorers, the impact that they had. We're going to talk about technological advances of the Europeans. So you're going to need two handouts, which I will give to you in just a little while, some scissors, and our student reader. All right, before we get started, I want you to talk with your group for a little bit and discuss what you remember from yesterday about our explorers.
I remember that, like, they was the Europeans. I remember they had weird names. I remember they. Oh, and I remember that, like, people was poured over Marines, Frances, and Spain, Portuguese, and people explored, and some people sailed around in Africa, and they was fighting for spices. And then we had like all that fun stuff. We also and yesterday we did an activity and that was fun too. Yeah, like the activity that we did was fun too. So then we had learned yesterday we learned about fun stuff. And we did a little paper activity.
All right, someone raise your hand and tell me something that you and your group discussed. Rayleigh?
We discussed about people that were from Spain.
All right. Yep, we had explorers from Spain, Portugal. What else, Aubrey?
And we learned that some European explorers, they sailed like across Africa to get spices.
All right, they found that trade route across, not across, but around the tip of Africa, right, to get to India. Thank you. All right, Barrett, what else? Good. Yeah. So they were trying to find that route to Asia or India for their spices. Because remember, they used to get spices over the Silk Road, but every time it would trade hands, the spices would become what? More expensive. And then eventually, like due to like wars and different stuff, they were unable to get them. So they decided that they needed to find a way to get them themselves. What else?
I also kind of remember that most people
Yeah, a lot of them were trying to get wealth for themselves and also for their country. Yes.
Also, you remember that Hudson was the one that found what we call present day New York, and also
That's right. So eventually they would make their way over to America. How did they make their way to America if they were trying to get to Asia? What do you think?
so they were trying to go to Asia, but they're like the maps that they were following weren't the right. They weren't right, and every time they went, they were always inaccurate. So they were thinking they were in different places. So when they first found America, they really thought they were in Asia.
That's right. And that's why they called them Indians, right? Because they thought that they had made it to India, but they had actually landed in America because their maps weren't complete at that time. Jensen?
Also, I think that because they thought they could just travel across the equator and then that would take us all the way around the world and it's like India and stuff, but they were wrong because, as Jackson Barrett said, their maps were not.
And we finally did have one explorer, which he died before finishing his journey. Anybody remember who that was? Who did the circumnavigation, which means to go all the way around? Aiden, you remember who that was? No, that was last unit. That's a good guess though.
Yeah, Ferdinand.
Magellan, yeah. Alright, so good job. Alright, so some of our explorers that we talked about yesterday, Christopher Columbus, Henry Hudson, who you said landed in kind of where present day New York is, Da Gama, Vespucci, Hernando de Soto. He was the first one to discover what? De Soto. Something that's very important to us. The Mississippi River. Good. And Magellan, his crew was the first one to go all the way around. And we said that they had 3 main motivations, which were, what's our 3 G's, Grace? Gold, glory, and God. Good. So they wanted to gain wealth for themselves, their countries. They were looking for those trade routes to kind of cut out the middleman, get those spices. They were looking for glory. When we say glory, we're talking about like the bragging rights, right? Being able to say we got here first and we're better than you. And then some of them we will see, especially some of our Spanish explorers that we'll talk about later, wanted to spread the Christian faith. Yes.
And, so you know how they were trying to cut off the middleman and get to it first? It would be able for them to set their own prices, but if the man that they was buying it from should have been smart enough to start raising the prices.
Well,
so it would basically like the middleman is still there, but he's technically not.
that is true. That is true. Which everybody really wants to get rich, right? And everybody wants to have the most money. But the person who's selling it over here in Asia, they were fine with the price that they originally had. They weren't responsible for the price changing along the way. But it really affected the buyer at the end because now they're paying way more money. All right. So I want you guys to kind of think back and think about what we learned in ELA 2 whenever we read the birch bark house. What was some of the bad things or the negative effects of the Europeans coming over and discovering all these new places? Yeah, so they introduced these diseases like we saw in the birch bark house. And Omikai's whole family, they came into contact with smallpox, other diseases too, right? That they had never been exposed to before. So yeah, now we have vaccinations and we get colds starting when we're a baby and we build up our immune system and they did not have that then. So it wiped out like entire groups of people. What else?
The people from Europe, they also introduced weapons, like firearms, which
Yeah.
made the Native Americans a lot more wasteful. So instead of using all the parts of the bison, they only used like one part of it, which made the bison go extinct faster because they didn't really savor it, because they used to have to hunt with it with a spear or something.
Right.
Now, they can just
Very good. Yeah, that's a good example. So they brought over these weapons which the Native Americans never had. So we kind of learned a bit back in that unit about how they would hunt bison in different ways. And remember, one of the ways was that they would burn the grass and they would like trap the animal inside, and then they would throw spears at it. But now all of a sudden we have guns, which are, you know, super powerful. And we also have other things, even things just like cups, right? Because what did they drink out of before? Like
Bison
bladder.
bladder.
Yeah, the bison bladder, right? So, but it was really good because they used every single part, like you said. And now all of a sudden, like they're still killing it, but it's only for the meat, and it's not environmentally friendly. That is kind of, and now we progress all the way until like now we have paper plates and plastic cups, and we just chunk them, right? So very, very different. Yes.
Also, due to the smallpox, kind of like what Barrett said, people since people had died, the family began to get sad.
Oh yeah. So we talked about how Machias went through like her depression, which was it was really terrible, right? Because I mean, some entire family died, or one person might have been remaining. Yes.
Another thing that they did, they were creating deals with them, but they couldn't read.
That's right.
What they were saying, so people were just signing. They could be signing to have to work for them for the rest of their lives with no money.
Yeah. So they, of course, did not have any kind of written language. The Native Americans had ways to communicate with other people, but the Europeans came over with their own language, and they would get the Native Americans to sign and agree to things, but they really didn't know what they were agreeing to, right? And a lot of these explorers were unkind to the Native Americans. They took them for slaves. They took their land. They just treated them badly. They forced them out. Yes. Yeah, it's in our book. Yeah, that's why he went to learn their language so that he could try to avoid, that happening to his people. All right, so see, these are some of the bad things. So when we get to the end of our unit, you could possibly discuss some of this in your presentation about, the greatest effect was a negative effect, something that happened. Today we're going to talk about a positive effect, exploration, which was technology. So what do we think about whenever we say technology? Aaliyah, what do you think about computers? Dave, what do you think about iPhones? What else? That's right. Yeah. Good. What do you think about AI? Yeah. Like we are so advanced. Like one recent example, yesterday our astronauts who've been stuck up in space for about 9 months now got to come home, right? So I thought that was pretty cool. What else?
I think of an Xbox 360.
Xbox, Blakely, TVs.
I agree with Barrett. It doesn't have to be like devices.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a device.
Like guns were technology for them.
That's right. So the actual definition of technology, even though when we think about tech, we think computers and phones and things like that, the actual definition is the application of scientific knowledge to the practical aims of human life. So how can we, create something that will help us improve our day-to-day life? Like Barrett gave that example of the printing press, which is a good example. We learned about that our last unit. That helped them tremendously, right? Now all of a sudden people have more access to books
They
and
start going back to their technology used in like animals born extinct. Like you have a certain amount of deer you can kill, use the whole thing, and then they'll probably take off that certain amount that you can kill.
oh, that's true. Yes.
Can a car be a type of technology?
Cars are a type of technology because we have applied sciences, right, to create things like motors and things like that. And what do we have before we had automobiles?
Animals.
Animals, right? Yeah, like which were pulled by horses. Yes. Trucks.
You could say the internet.
The internet. Anything that improves our life. So all those things are technology. It's just not the only kind of technology. Most of these things that you guys have talked about require what? Electricity, right? They didn't even have electricity back then. But they still had to figure out ways to improve their day-to-day life, right? So we're going to talk about 4 different technological advances today. One of them being the lantern cell, one of them being the compass, the astrolabe, and the caravel. Okay. It was something that they used to locate themselves. How did they navigate before we had maps? Well, they had maps, but before we had like the maps app on our phone, how would you navigate?
Oh, you had to like kind of like. They would have like these big old papers I seen in the diamond movie paper.
Well, they would have a map, but if I have this huge scroll that's a map and I'm looking at it, how do I know where I am on that map?
Coordinates. Oh, you gotta know the coordinates.
That's part of it.
A compass.
Close. Well, yes. The compass tells us what?
Yeah,
Which direction? So if I have a compass, I know that I'm going north or I know that I'm going south. The astrolabe tells me where I am on the map by looking up at the sky. Okay? So this is how they...
the stars.
The stars, yeah. So they would...
I like that from Wanda.
Yeah, yeah. That's right. Alright, so we're going to talk about these 4 technological advances. I'm going to give you this handout. We're going to read about each 4, and then we are going to do our little foldable. And we are going to use this tomorrow whenever we continue talking about our exploring. Can you pass these out quietly? Alright, take one, pass it down. And if you have an extra one, I will take your extra thing. Alright, so we are going to read first. Make sure that you are on the side that says side A. It has the pictures of these sailboats at the bottom. Thank you. Alright, before we get started reading, yes. That's all we're gonna share. We only have to put a few back. Alright, before we get started reading, we are going to put our foldable together. Okay? Very, very simple. So if you look at me, this side will be the front and the back. Okay? So we're gonna fold it like we would have a hot dog. Alright, hot dog style. Just like this, long ways. I'll give you this one whenever I go on. Alright. Everybody have theirs folded like this? Fold it. Okay, if it's a little crooked, as long. And we should have 4 pictures of our technology on the front, And on the back there's a spot where you can write your name so that we don't misplace it. Alright, every group has some scissors. There's not quite enough for everyone, so we're gonna share. There's only 3 little spots to cut, okay? We don't want to cut the whole thing. I want you to be careful because we don't want to cut a piece off. Do you see how there's dotted lines on the front? You are only cutting the dotted line, so if I take it, I'm going to cut this dotted line up until I get to the part that I folded, just so that it creates a little flap. Borrow your scissors and I will demonstrate. So we're going to cut just like this. On the dotted line. Do not cut past your fold, okay? So that way we can just flip it open. You should only have 3 cuts on your paper because there's only 3 dotted lines. When you get done, yours should look like this. You still have the pictures on the front, but now each one is a little flap where you can open it up, and we'll take notes in just a little bit. Everyone have their paper cut?
No, man.
Make sure you are only cutting one side. Anyone here have it cut? Anyone else need help? Got it cut? Alright, as we read about each one of these new pieces of technology that the European explorers were able to use, we will pause and we will make some notes inside of our foldable. Who wants to start off reading? Alright, Jackson, you can read first. Clayton, you can read the next paragraph. Make sure you're starting on side A, which says technological advances during the age of exploration.
Exploration was made possible by tools which help sailing more safely and quickly make sea voyages. One important inventions are the launching sail, magnetic compass,
Astrolabe.
astrolabe, and caravel.
Good. So innovations, which means new ideas or new inventions that are going to help us. All right, Clayton.
One innovation was the Latin sail. Europeans traditionally used square shaped sails. These sails allowed ships to move only in the same direction as the wind. On the other hand, the Latin sail is a triangular sail at an angle of 45 degrees to the mast. This sail allowed explorers to
used by European sailors during the Asian exploration.
Good job. Alright, so if you look down here at the bottom, you can see the first picture is an example of what they used to have, which was a square sail. And how did these boats move?
Only with what direction the wind.
Yeah, whatever direction the wind was blowing. So the wind would blow and it would catch the sail and it would push the boat forward. So now we have this triangular sail and they put it at an angle of 45 degrees and it lets us do what? How does it improve their lives? Jaden?
They get to like steer it either way they want.
They could go any direction that they need to go.
So they really wasn't able to control when they were going first.
They really, yeah, they couldn't. They had to depend on the wind. Alright, so let's pause before we read. Yes, you can read next, but let's pause and open up our foldable and we're going to take some notes. I'm going to do the first one with you. Alright, so on one side, the side of the flap that we pull open, it says, what is it? So a lateen sail is a what? Yeah, it's a triangular sail. It's a sail in the shape of a triangle. And this comes right from your paper. So it's a triangular sail. And it's at an angle of what? 45 degrees to the mast, which allows us to navigate. Okay. Why is it an improvement? So on the other side, it says, why is it an improvement? It allowed us to go what?
Steer slack allowed us to go whatever direction.
Any direction. Okay? So again, before we had to depend on which direction the wind was blowing. And now this lateen sail allows explorers to sail in any direction. Alright, we're going to finish reading and then I'm going to give you a few minutes to work with your group to fill out the other three sections of these technological advances. Alright, Aubrey, you want to pick up where he left off? About the magnetic compass?
Another item that helped explorers navigate was the magnetic compass, a tool which was first used in China. A magnet compass is a navigational tool which points north because
Magnetized
magnetized needle
aligns
itself with the Earth's magnetic field. Traditionally, explorers used the location of the sun or stars to know which direction they were going. But sometimes the sky was cloudy. Explorers used the magnetic compass to check the directions of the winds when the clouds obscured the sky so they couldn't see the sun or stars. Magnetic compass helped sailors know where they were going, which led to safer voyages.
Alright, good. It says they used the compass when the clouds obscured the sky. What does it mean, obscured? Yeah, when the sky is blocked. So they used to use the sun because we know that the sun always rises. Anybody know which side the sun always rises on?
The horizon. I forgot what time.
No, which one of our four directives does the sun?
North.
So we have north, south, west.
West.
Yes, it always rises in the east and it sets in the west. So if I look up in it's morning time and I see the sun coming up over here, I know that I'm facing east. If it's evening, the sun's going down, it's in the west. But what happens whenever it's too cloudy to see the sun? Or
Compass.
yeah, so now we have a compass, and the compass always points north, right? So it has this little needle, and it points north because it's magnetic and we have the earth has its own magnetic field. So I always know what direction north is. Okay, so if I'm holding a compass, I can look at it until I'm pointing the same direction as north, right? I may not be going north, but my compass is always going to go north. Alright, on the back side, we pronounce that word astrolabe. And it sounds like what word? Astro reminds me of what? Astronaut or yeah, astronomy, right? That's the study of the what? Stars. Astronomy is the study of the night sky or space. All right. Who would like to read? All right. Blakely, you want to read? Oh, astrolabe.
In addition to the astrolabe helps sailors navigate better. Astrolabes were most likely invented around the second
Century.
century in the Roman Empire. An astrolabe is a tool to measure the latitude of a ship at sea by measuring the angle between the horizon and the sun, or the North Star. Latitude is important for navigation because it tells the sailor the ship's
Position.
position north or south of the equator. Unlike other navigational instruments, astrolabes can be used at night or on foggy days. Astrolabes can also be used to set time.
Alright, good. And when it says navigational instruments, it does not mean noise instruments. What is another meaning for instrument? A gadget or tool or something that we can use, okay? So something we can use to navigate. Alright, we have one more that we're going to discuss, which is a caravel. You want to read? Alright, good. So we have smaller ships now. They're more lightweight, which helps us to go faster whenever we're moving. These are just 4 innovations which made the age of exploration possible. Curious about more technological advances? We can research some of these, which are the quadrant, the galleon, and the traverse board. And if that's something that you're interested in, to look up, we can look that up later to see if that might be something that you want to talk about when we get to our unit task. Alright, we're going to take about 6 minutes and we are going to answer the rest of our questions inside of our foldable so that we can keep these notes. You can work with your group members. Alright, go ahead and get started. Start where it says magnetic compass.
I said that the southern direction was
So, an angle of 45 degrees, and it helps are not done, keep working. It looks like almost all of you are done, so we're gonna go over it together. And again, if you are still writing, feel free to keep writing. Alright, so we are starting on our second piece of technology, which is the magnetic compass. On the first side, it says, what is it? And it says a magnetic compass is a tool which points in which direction? North. So our compass points north. And we want to capitalize north because of a magnetized needle which aligns itself with our what? Yeah, Earth has its own magnetic field, so it aligns itself with Earth's magnetic field. Alright, on the other side, why is it important? We can use our compass anytime, right? So we can figure it out even when what? So I'm writing it, even when what? Yeah, so when the clouds obscure the sky, and you can say block out, because that's what obscure means, to like make it to where you can't see it, okay? So when the clouds obscure the sky, which means that they would no longer be able to see the sun or these stars. Alright, our third one, the astrolabe, it says that it is a tool to measure the what? Latitude. So it measures the latitude. And remember we talked about longitude and latitude whenever we had our virtual day work, and that's how they knew exactly where they were on that map, because they would say I'm 45 degrees north or 60 degrees south or 60 degrees east. Okay? Unlike the other instruments or navigational tools, they can be used when? At night or when it's foggy. What do you think would happen before they had these, advances in instruments? What do you think would happen if they couldn't see the sky? Like if we're out in the middle of the ocean, they're getting off track, right? Because we really don't know where we're at. We're hoping for the best.
But how do they even know the compass works?
I'm not sure. I mean, it seems that they have some way to prove that it was correct, but I guess that, since it constantly said the same thing, and they knew which direction they were saying is north, and if the compass always points that way, eventually it just became like a fact. Okay? Alright, last one, the caravel. The caravel is a what?
Small and
Small and fast ship. And why was this an improvement over the large, heavy ship? Its weight made it what? Fast. And the sails made it
easy to maneuver.
okay. So it was fast and easy. And what does maneuver mean?
Steer.
Yeah. Oh, the long journeys. Yeah. So they were better for long journeys. Good job. Yeah. So they were made for long journeys. I'll write that as well. Alright. So it was a much better improvement from those square sails, right? Which, because now they can go any direction and they can get there quicker. Alright, I gave everybody in here a little sticky note. What we're going to do, we're going to line up to go to the bathroom in just a minute. Before you get in line, I want you to write down which one of these four, so we're only going to talk about these four for now, which one of these four do you think was most useful? Or like the greatest achievement? And tell me why. Now give me a solid reason. Which one do you think would be most helpful to the explorers.